Hello and welcome to this webinar. I will wait in a couple of few seconds as I think people are getting connected and starting up things. Today, we will have a conversation and a discussion on the theme of transforming, or how you can transform your employee engagement with help from AI and HR data. I'm Amy, your host for today. I work at Winningtemp as a customer success manager. Winningtemp is a smart, intuitive platform for measuring employee engagement. And we provide businesses all around the world with these real-time insights and real-time HR data. With us today, we have our guest, Lee Watts. And Lee, he is heading up the People Operations Department with Kurtosys. And Kurtosys is a company that has done a really nice and impressive journey this last year with transforming their HR function and becoming a lot more data-driven. And this journey that Kurtosys has done has led to amazing business results, actually. So seeing an increase of their eNPS going from 9 up to 23 in only 1 year, and also lowering attrition rates. But I won't spoil too much because I know that Lee himself is super excited to be sharing his experiences and his insights from this even more. And it really is fantastic to see how many of you that has chosen to join us on this webinar today. So I'm super excited about that. We, from Winningtemp side, I will start off with sharing some insights from us of what we think will be focus areas for HR teams across the globe for the year to come. Then Lee will share his presentation. At the end, we're thinking that it would be fun to have a conversation with you guys. And we'll have a Q&A session. And for me personally, I think this is a unique opportunity, being connected, having so many of you guys turning up here today. And I really would think it would be a lot of fun if you want to share whatever reflections, experiences, and questions that you might have to our guest today. So please use the Q&A function to submit these questions or thoughts, and we will make sure to cover them at the end of today's webinar. All righty, let's kick it off. Winningtemp being the solution that we are, we obviously have, I would say, hundreds of interactions with HR professional, HR leaders, management teams across the world. Based on these interactions, our own data, and also a lot of the studies that we do, I want to share with you some of the kind of focus areas that we see are evolving for 2023 that we think HR teams really will be focusing on and investing time in for the year to come. So we know that there's a tremendous support from employees, and we also know that we have been surveying a lot, asking ourselves, what kind of workplace will we be preferring in the future? And it's very evident that there's a massive support for the hybrid workplace. And one of the larger studies that we took part of was a study that ADP, a global software for the solution for an HCR system, they conducted last year, with the astonishing results that 64% out of the 32,000 employees asked in this survey, they said that they would consider changing their job if their current employer would tell them that, okay, guys, we're all going back working 100% from the office. So where does that leave us? Smart, kind of keeping ahead of the curve, smart HR leaders will have to use 2023 to really evaluate your current processes and making sure they fit the hybrid workspace. Working and reflecting on questions such as, how do we create true connection between teams when we're spread across? Or how do we maintain a winning culture? A second area that we unfortunately see is that attrition, or high attrition rates, seems to be lingering on also into 2023. IDC conducted a study last year and found that 32% of European employees already during 2022 were still actively looking for new job opportunities. Experts on the field claim that by 2030, we will see a global talent shortage of 85 million people. And that's a massive challenge. From our data, we see that professional development and the offering around professional development can really be an important key in retaining your employees. So using 2023 in looking over, but perhaps also strengthening your training offering, we believe will be a smart investment to do. Not only because we know that professional development drives motivation and engagement for our employees, it also puts you as an employer in a really sweet position where you, rather than going to a very competitive labor market, can do more of the hiring and internal promotion. I would assume that a few of you took part of Microsoft did a very huge study late last fall where they interviewed or surveyed over 20,000 people across 11 countries on their well-being at work. And unfortunately, 40% of the respondees reported that they were either feeling symptoms of having a burnout or already were burnt out. Businesses really need to put their attention to an unfortunate growing problem that we see is being arisen. And here, HR leaders and heroes obviously plays a very important role. An important role in supporting and empowering leaders that meet with and conversate with and engage with our employees. Support them and empower them to spot them being able to address symptoms of burnout before they turn into actual issues and problems for the individual and for the business. Lastly, an area is the theme and area of cultures. So we predict and we expect continuous large investments in HR and in engagement initiatives also to follow into 2023. And seeing a lot of more businessing leaping into all of those businesses that are already racing to establish and build cultures that engage, inspire, and retain people. So culture as a fourth kind of highlighted area of focus. And speaking of culture, our guest, Lee, knows everything of company cultures. I know that he has some really good insights and experiences from Kurtosys. So I'm gonna let him in. And there he is. Hey, Lee, how are you doing today?
Yes, I'm well. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I'm coming to you from a very sunny Cape Town today. I'm actually standing in our office, which has been recently refurbed, displaying the new core values on the pillars, the key pillars of our culture.
I told you just before stepping into the webinar that you looked very healthy in the sun over in Cape Town. So not so much of the feeling here from another snow blizzard in Stockholm, unfortunately.
Well, the doors are always open, so you're welcome to visit us. Good relationship. We'll take it from there.
You don't know what you're saying.
Anyway, thank you so much for having me. I think, if anything from this webinar, what I really hope the viewers will take away is some insight into our case study, our journey in using machine learning and AI, predominantly in sort of collating the candidate, or should I say employee feedback via surveys, and then being able to plot the graph forwards, which I'll explain a little bit later as we go. Just to give you some context, I joined Kurtosys in 2021. It was just on the back end of a 2 and a bit years worth of global pandemic, you know, unprecedented, all this buzzword bingo around, you know, high attrition rates, and naturally Kurtosys was equally as affected. We didn't escape that. And so when I had a look at the original design from attraction to recruitment, onboarding, development, retention, payroll, and separation, which is essentially the people function, we had the basics and it was a job well done. But I knew that we could take it from something that just sort of, that'll pass, to something that's a little bit more akin with world class. So let me tell you a little bit about Kurtosys. We essentially are a secure cloud-based platform, and we focus our attentions on enabling investment managers to deliver greater data insights and reporting capabilities worldwide. We do this through pain-free tools, which allow for things like seamless integration of data and content, automated reporting, engaging website experiences, and safe, secure client portals. We're currently working with some of the world's leading and largest financial institutions globally, and we're located in 4 areas, that being the US, the UK, Luxembourg, and ZA. Now, I'm based in Cape Town, and in Cape Town, we have the largest percentage of our staff complement. We have roughly 185 people, and of those in South Africa, we have about 160. And so this was an excellent little experiment to run with. Now, a couple of the things that I had to look at before we could do anything was the types of people we employ. Excellent timing, Amy. So because of the complex nature of our code base and the speed at which it takes a new employee to become familiar with it and almost become net neutral in the investment that we're making. That coupled with the types of solutions and features that we're having to build for our clients at pace means that it can be a very difficult thing to integrate, certainly within a reasonable period of time. There's a lot of training that needs to be acquired. There's a lot of skills that need to be transferred, and there's quite a lot of coaching that needs to happen. As we stand now, we've got 45 clients, and we're moving away from being the sort of bespoke software almost as a service provider to something more platform-based in a true SaaS sense of the word. So when I had a look at this, I was enlightened. I really was. The types of people that we employ here are both curious and humble, which is just like the most magical equation you could possibly think of. So constantly looking around the next corner. But then if they fail, they get up, they look at what they're learning, and then they implement the learnings. It creates speed, greater speed. We have people here that have the ability to collaborate across teams and across the company. And I think in a tech environment, regardless of your size, if you have an ability to be self-managed and self-organized, I think you're already winning half the battle. We look at people with role-related knowledge. We believe in good attitude. Don't get me wrong, but you need to sort of have some sort of cognitive problem-solving ability. And, you know, we will work with you to get to the levels that we see in you within that period. And we also need people that can prioritize. It's absolutely impossible, right, to be able to do everything all at once. So saying no is love too. We like risk takers, but when I say risk takers, I don't mean, you know, just like throwing caution to the wind. I mean, there has to be some sort of calculated metric behind that. And this is where we get into our partnership with Winningtemp and the way that we approach our people in a moment. We also like employees that can see the opportunity amidst the chaos. You know, I think it was Google that famously said when they were going through the Larry Page peacetime CEO bit was to simply manage the chaos. That's where the creativity comes out. That's where the genius really does shine. And then fresh thinking. I mean, I love somebody who's slightly naive or could be considered an underdog. It's because they don't realize that they were never supposed to have achieved that, but they did it. And this is a big thing for me. So now you've hired this person, right? You've got them in, they've integrated, they've made connections, they're starting to move throughout the teams, and they're starting to deliver on behalf of the organization. But you've got this remote working, this hybrid working, this great resignation, this ton of content which is being produced and rallied on the back of, depending what your preference is, let's be honest. And so keeping that talent, it's coy. It's a really difficult thing to do. And so understanding our audience before we roll out an initiative, whether it be some sort of incentive, benefit subsidy, or a wellness program, we need to understand who we are and what our stock is. And so this sort of led us to deciding, is this a challenge that we wanted to undertake? We felt that organizations in general, and specifically us, needed better feedback loops, one where people could provide that hardcore, radical candor, possibly under the cover of anonymity, so that we could be better today than what we were yesterday, and tomorrow than we were today. So, challenge accepted.
I actually love what you're saying there with looking at yourself in the mirror first and not just jumping on because, you know, it's what everyone else is doing. Actually looking inward and asking yourself objectively as a business, are we a good fit? Is this for us?
100%. And, you know, nobody knows anything, by the way. Nobody knows anything. If you throw something out without having some GPS as a guidance tool, you're throwing it into the air and you're hoping and you're praying. So the hinge between the employees and the organization. Picture this. So for the longest time, I've been saying you cannot spell hero without HR. We are the hinge between the organization and the people. But the naivety in that statement rings true even further because it distills down another layer, which is how do we then be the most robust, most watertight, and beneficial entity to the organization, considering that we believe we're at the epicenter of it. Well, data, right? So picture this, a world where you can accurately and intelligently predict human behavior within your workforce. It's amazing. It takes the guesswork out of it. Now, don't get me wrong, we've all got a gut. And that's basically a database on the historical experiences that we've had up until this date. But if you're trying to plot the graph forwards, well, how do you attribute analogy or first principle thinking? So we thought to ourselves, well, just think about how valuable this data could be, right? Just think about the enriched credibility that you could provide to a proposed strategy when you understand that A, 100% of the team are on board, or B, none of them are. And this immediately we felt would eradicate groupthink. So as Kurtosys, we're on a mission to deliver the most efficient, scalable, and client-focused investor communications technology for investment managers. And the only way we do this is through 3 channels, which is product innovation, long-term partnerships, and my favorite piece, and most importantly, passionate people. But what is passion and how do you measure it? So as the custodians of this, our leadership and people operations teams decided that we need to build a culture, one in which employees could genuinely feel psychologically safe to perform the best work of their lives. But we also needed to quantify this, right? We needed some form of, I don't know, metric. So some form of measurement of progress. It didn't matter where we started, but could we look back on how far we've come?
Mm-hmm.
Should have got some water, I think. Okay, so we took a decision. And this was a beautiful thing. I actually got a phone call from a representative. We were scouring our networks. We were having a look at LinkedIn. We were going, both professional and personal, and we were trying to understand which organizations are using what tool and how do we go about acquiring this tool? What cost is it? Can we afford it? How are we going to roll this out? There was a plethora of questions that came on the back of this, but I got a phone call, and the individual on the end of the phone call said, "We simply cannot afford to leave the employee experience to hindsight any longer." And I thought to myself, holy crap, well, that's exactly it, right? And you're going to hear a ton of argument around, oh, it's finance, oh, it's my manager, oh, yeah, I understand. Those are hygiene factors. If you can't get on with the people you work with and you can't pay your bills, no matter how good your employment experience is, you're going to leave. But how do you know this, and how can you create an intervention? So we essentially decided that we no longer wanted this employment experience to be left to hindsight, which was traditionally done through exit interviews. But that simply isn't going to cut the mustard anymore. Nobody's going to give you the raw, honest truth. They don't want to burn their bridges. And they really don't want their reputation tarnished either. So intelligently predicting our human behavior, how did we go about this? Well, we wanted to evidence the decisions that we're making. So it's going to be data-based decision making. We wanted to understand the capability of that, and we wanted to take out the guesswork from the organization. We wanted to measure a number of things, right? And the list is as long as your arm, it really is. But we picked these, and I've put them here on a note just so that I can say them properly. Mm-hmm. We wanted to measure engagement, performance, well-being, diversity and inclusion, leadership, job satisfaction, autonomy, personal development, team spirit, commitment, sustainability, trust, and innovation. And we wanted to do it effectively. But with that list, as a ballpark, how are you going to do this, right? Well, technology allows us to more seamlessly and much quickly get this information, make sense of it. And as long as it's consensual, then we can utilize it to the benefit of all parties. So we figured as a starting point, using employee survey data is probably the best way to contribute out the blocks. If done well and with good engagement, and initially under the cover of anonymity, we found that this feedback and this data could be utilized to create what we refer to as feedback loops. Okay, so you've now told us, right? But now it's up to us to create a focus group. So we now need to come back to you, not rebuttal it, but you've been seen, you've been heard, you belong, and these are the course of action we're going to take in order to remedy that or continue to double down on that. And so that creates dialogue. And so the idea here was never just to have this completely sort of remote system where you would only communicate on that like a Facebook or a Twitter or a LinkedIn. We wanted to use that to start the conversation and then to take it offline, get into a room, get face-to-face, and connect and allow the creative juices to flow. So I stated earlier, we're now in a time where technology makes this super easy. We're able to collect both qualitative feedback, essentially humans, and then we're able to quantify it too, which is amazing. So there you go. If you go back to those slides, we've now got a benchmark. We've got a tool in which we can measure whatever action it is we take based on the feedback we're receiving. And if we do this well, throughout that entire employee lifecycle, we would have data points where we could either A, create an intervention, or as Laszlo Bock refers to, a nudge for behavioral change, or ultimately we can pat ourselves on the back and say, okay, that's great, but how do we make it even better?
You should get some water.
We'll be all right. I'll fight it. Okay, good.
Now, are you having different kind of conversations within the organization since this?
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing, I think, and I can't speak from before the time I was here, but I can only really give you the bits that we've been going through over the course of the last 16 months. So just to give you some additional context, we had a founder, Mash Patel, and he handed over the reins to a professional CEO, a chap called Lee Godfrey, who's now, our illustrious leader at the helm. And he firmly believes that feedback is a gift. And the idea behind radical candor, or being able to have these conversations, is at first you need to create some sort of psychological safety. And Netflix did this particularly well in their growth phase. And so where we are at this point was we found that it wasn't that people weren't willing to contribute, or people didn't have great ideas, or people weren't necessarily willing to fail. It's just we didn't really have the enabler in order for that to start. And like a really good middleman, the system that we implemented allowed us to start these conversations. And it's a beautiful thing, because once you start speaking, you realize, oh gosh, it wasn't that bad after all, or, okay, there's a real serious issue here and we need to intervene. But either way, on both of those scenarios, you're winning, because ultimately the employee is actively engaged. They're contributing back to the organization. It then flips itself around. The organization then contributes back to the employment experience, and collectively the institutional knowledge is retained from a technical perspective, and you can actually move forward. So taking that decision to maybe slow down in order to speed up over the course of the last 12 months has really benefited us. And I'm really happy about that. I'm sure you can tell I'm like busting with energy here. I'm really happy about that. Now, there's a couple of cool learnings that I want to reference on the back of this, which we were able to implement throughout the course of a 12-month period. And you'll see on the next slide that what we speak to in terms of our eNPS engagements and attrition is it's wonderful. So here's some real hardcore evidence. No sugarcoating.
Yes, please. Yeah, that's why people are in.
We started on the 15th of February 2022. Okay, we wanted to understand what our stock was. Now, just a precursor to that, we had already ascertained what the demographics were, what the average age is, what the average tenure is. We had a look at pretty much what a singular Kurtosian might look like from a persona perspective. And so we understood our target market. Now we're got an average age of 35 years and 9 months here. So we knew we weren't speaking to, brand new freshers straight out of university wanting PlayStations and slides. But similarly, we also knew that we weren't really dealing with folks that maybe required a more structured, traditional banking type organizational design from the past. So we were then able to further dig down deeper by understanding what the temperature or the mood was attributed to those pillars that we wanted to test. And then the all-important question, which is, would you recommend a family, friend, or a family member to work at your organization? So we started with 9. We started on the 15th of February, 2022. Our eNPS score was 9. There were some teams that were saying, sack this, I'm out, I can't handle this anymore. And then there were some teams that were sort of blissfully unaware, oh, I love it, it's amazing here. And that's fine, you're going to get that mix. And then there were bits in between. And then sometimes it wasn't even the same issue, As we progressed, we realized at the beginning of the year, we had 44% attrition. It's horrible. It was kind of frightening for me. I even still get little pangs of anxiety thinking about it, because as a staff complement of 185 people, that's like 40% in their first year of employment. It's pretty scary thinking. You can't move quickly that way. Good. We had a dwindling net headcount, but being a technology company, we didn't need hundreds and hundreds of people. We just needed really good, excellent people that could, produce work at an order of magnitude at X. So 9 was the eNPS. Throughout the course of the next 10 months, we took it to 23. When I had a look at the attrition, we reduced that from 34% down to 33.2, so a little bit over 10%, which I was over the moon with. Talent team don't have to work so hard anymore, although if you're watching this, get back to work. We had a look at the employee satisfaction. We went from a 7.1 overall temperature, and the index was 7.6, all the way up to an 8, right? So we're starting to get this right. And when you have a look at the engagement rate, how do you validate whether you're getting this right or not? Well, our engagement rate was up around 91%, certainly over the last 5 months. It has dropped off slightly, but that's because we've been on holiday, and so only some people are contributing. But we're roughly at about 80% at the moment, but I've seen it grow already in January. So 91% engagement. I thought to myself, that data is enriched, it's validated, this is true. This is now a single source of truth in the thing that's difficult to measure, which is how do we feel we're doing, which is amazing. A couple of the learnings
and imagine, but imagine as an HR leader, professional, whatever you work with when in an HR function, being able to take that very feasible hands-on data and bring, to board or a group of management and like, look, hey, pretty good investment, right? Working with your people.
Well, absolutely. I became famous in the first 5 months. I got to tell you, every town hall we had, oh, let's have a people slot. By the end of it, I was thinking to myself, these people are going to get bored of my voice. We've got to be careful here. But it was just such beautiful data to be able to present back and let people know that, hey, we're attributing dollar values to this, and actually it's a bloody good investment. So let's keep on trucking, But yes, we use this data a lot. Our CEO is a big advocate of it. The Exco team is too. The way we use this data as well, which is important. I'm not really sure where I am on this deck, so now I'm just riffing. So just go with me. We take this information per team, per department, and we take it into our stand-ups, right? And I mean, I'm guilty of this too. I saw in one survey there was a minus 13% on leadership, which was out of my team. So I had a sleepless night, I felt a little paranoid. I thought, how am I going to remedy this? But the best way to do it, in my opinion, and what we do around here is we take it to our stand-ups and we go, okay, guys, this is the feedback we're receiving. This is the trends we're starting to see. Let's talk about this. Is it too much flexibility I'm giving you? Is it not enough flexibility I'm giving you? What do you want to see more of? And what do you want to see less of? And that question is just the most, it's like nectar, it's honey. It's absolutely, it's really worthwhile asking it.
And thank you for sharing a vulnerable experience, of course, but something that I can also recall speaking also a lot with leaders themselves. I mean, this is perhaps what they feel anxious about. What will the data tell the organization about my leadership? And maybe we'll get the chance to resume to that a bit later on, but it would be interesting in understanding and knowing how to equip those leaders with actually handling that kind of feedback as well. But not for now. I will let you go on in your beautiful journey here.
Okay, good. Just before and finally, there was some learnings that we took away from this, which was some additional initiatives that we had established and that we delivered upon, and it was based on what we've learned, really. So we brought to life several changes for the positive, so it's a net positive, and it's thanks to these feedback loops and focus groups that I spoke to. So we've created and established an internal learning forum, and it's got the key stakeholders in there. There was a study policy introduced. We've increased the benefits, and these were applied. There's a long stay incentive for employees with many years of service created. And I know that's cosmetic, but the point was we didn't have it, right? And it's a big benefit. It's a nice thing. There were SPOT awards for exceptional performance, and we do 2 of these a month, and this is an EXCO initiative. So a name gets nominated based on a bit of work that's performed either internally or externally that would have A, made us money, B, saved us money, or C, saved us or improved our efficiency. And then that way you can also quantify that, right? So it's no longer, oh, favoritism, this one, that one, this one. No, here it's in black and white, but this is what happened. Talent LMS partnership. Alaudin, who heads up our training, along with Derek and myself, we arranged for a partnership agreement with LinkedIn Learning, which has seen great success, wonderful engagement there too. We brought in Cadence, which is a hybrid booking tool, allowing individuals who are working in a hybrid capacity to be able to see who of their colleagues or teams are in on any given day. Because I'm an advocate for this. Maybe it's my age, I'm 41, but I still genuinely believe face-to-face is the best place. It doesn't need to be 7 days a week, but let's connect 2 or 3 times a week. I think that's important. We brought in a lunch subsidy for those working in office. You know, I get it. Transport's expensive. There's an ESG question. So we will help subsidize you in some way, shape, and form. We've also rolled out, and I'm so glad that this data was something that you highlighted and have discovered, because we thought this is a no-brainer. We're rolling out a really year-round perennial wellness program. So just a quick second on that. Basically, wellness cannot be siloed to 1 week in a year, somewhere in September when people are facing burnout. It's a hygiene factor. It needs to be done daily or weekly or monthly. And so we've rolled out the second week of every month. We're having a wellness initiative, and it's going to cover everything from financial to psychological to nutritional to physical. We're going the whole 9 yards with this, and it's based on the feedback we've been receiving out of this tool. And then the last thing was a unique one, which was backed by our CEO as well, which is access to Ignites Europe. So we're at this intersection between investment managers and technology. And we, as technologists, need to know more about the industry sector and the clients that we're servicing. And so this is an FT, a Financial Times publication, which everybody has a subscription to here, and we can dig into exactly what's going on in the industry. I think with all of that, the last thing that we've had, which we haven't managed to get through yet, is a request to Winningtemp, and I'm doing it live here. Hope to manifest it out into reality.
You've been ribbing on that.
We've been asked by the team whether there is any possibility we could have kind of like an open text suggestion box, a green face for a happy suggestion or a red face for a gripe, and we would like to propose a name, the Innovation Incubator. Play with that, product team. Let us know what you think.
Wow. Okay. If we have time, let's see. I'm seeing that time is a dear friend of ours. I might have a little package present then at the end of this session for you.
Awesome. Good news.
Great.
Yeah, and finally, last 3 things. I won't take it too far. I've said a lot today, and I've sort of jumped around, so thank you for staying with me. It boils down to this. You need to create rapid, proactive, and reactive response processes. You need to create quantified filters as well as feedback platforms, and then you need to action the feedback. And what's most important is to continue to provide radical, honest, candid feedback. It's the only way forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Lee. I did rush you through there to the last slide because I have seen some good questions coming in on the chat here for us during the time that you have been speaking. And there's one in the audience wondering, so it's a long question stated, but what were some of the initial reactions from the organization when bringing this initiative live? And what have you been doing before?
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. I love this question. So here's the conundrum, right? From our perspective, we were super lucky in that most companies want to drive this decision from the top or from the bottom or from the sides. But for us, it really was kind of like an omni acceptance, an omni decision. Everyone here knew that we needed a way in order to communicate internally a little better, in order to provide feedback that doesn't tarnish this idea that, you know, I may lose my job if I offend someone, right? So I think the only other way to do this, and we traveled this course as well, was to create some really good communication around this, like internal comms, explaining like why we're doing this, right? And how it's going to benefit. And it's not a one and done situation. It's a constant reminder. We've got a thing called In the Loop, which is our internal sort of news paper, if you like. And in there, we sort of speak to these items all the time. and we remind people why we're doing it, and then we show some of the successes and also some of the not so successes that have been happening based on this feedback. And ultimately, it's really come to a head where we're now very much more leaning towards a product-led engineering team with, you know, this product catalog, and it's becoming a more mature offering on the whole, from both the employment experience and the actual service that the organization provides. And so I think we were very lucky here. But how do you start? Well, you start with pointing out the obvious, which is, if we don't do anything, we know what the outcome is. So it is now riskier not to take the risk. And that is the fundamental single principle thinking there.
That's a good reminder for all of us. And another question coming in is, do you also work with the positive feedback coming in?
Yes, and you know what? I'm going to call out Dick Wallen and Phil Cohen on this. They work at Winningtemp. What they helped us identify was that we were only answering 30% of the anonymous feedback. So for every 3,000 bits of content or comments we were getting, we were only answering 1,000, and that was the negative stuff we were answering, right? Because you're like, oh gosh, we got to get to it, like let them know. But actually, I strongly advise answering the good stuff too, you know. And creating kind of like a RAG status, like a red, amber, green, and then pushing them through that. You know what I mean? If the initial bit was red, try and push them to amber. If it's amber, then push it to green, and just monitor it the whole way. But yes, we do that now. We were guilty of not doing it, but we do it now, and I think 100% do it.
And 3,000 feedback in comments. That's amazing. Coming from me, knowing kind of what the benchmarks are, that is, you know, super evidence of having a really engaged workforce. So good on you.
No, thank you.
And this feedback, is that also accessible for leaders? I mean, on demand, is that how you use it, so they can go into the system and review the feedback that has been coming in?
Yeah, correct. I mean, there's three system administrators which have basically the key to look at everything, but each Exco member and each middle management layer will have access to their pool of people. Of course, what we did do was we limited it to teams of 4 or more, because it's very easy to pick out who the person would be if you've got a team of 3. So if it's a team of 3, for example, that feedback would filter into the next parent group. But yes, we're not here to manage the individuals on behalf of the managers. They're there to manage their people. We're simply providing a tool for the enablement of that.
Understood. And I think we have time for one last question, and that is someone wondering, what additional support do you give your leaders in handling and working with feedback? Yeah,
really great question too. So we've created some training content, although the tool we use, which is clearly Winningtemp, we're on the webinar. There's a lot of training content that you can use there, but we created almost like not SOPs, not standard operating procedures, but more like protocols, where we go, okay, so if you use the tips drop down and you create an action, and then you can measure how that action is being tracked and whether the trends are being changed. It's kind of like management in a box, and we've continue to provide insight and training content around that. I think we could probably do more if I'm looking in the mirror and being completely transparent. But I think so far so good, you know, it's going well. We really want to double down on that. But yes, create some content. Knowledge is power. You'll use it if you understand how it functions. And then when you see the benefit of it, you become a brand ambassador and an advocate for it. So if you can see that somebody maybe isn't using it or they're shying away from it, it's probably just down to not fully understanding the function or the why.
Understood. Thank you so much. Hate to be the messenger of the bad news, but we're running out of time, Lee. And for everyone that joined onto this call, thank you so much with your contribution of your questions. you will be sent out a summary of the key takeaways from Lee and Kurtosys' journey. If you have any additional questions, you can just feel free to answer that follow-up email that will be sent to all of you. You know, you spoke before, Lee, of the feedback being the gift it is. So I really want to give you some feedback here live and let you know that you delivered this with confidence, with bravery, which I know are two values that you treasure a lot at Kurtosys. And yeah, it's just been an absolute honor to listen into all of the things that you have you know, managed to accomplish in, I mean, it's been a short while. We're talking a year. It's gone fast.
It's fair. Yeah, thank you. Oh,
Any last words?
Kind of you. Nothing. Just go out there, be brilliant, be better today than you were yesterday. And I promise you, when you get home, kiss your family, tell them you love them, and everything's going to be okay.
On that note, thank you so much, and thank you everyone for today. Bye.
Bye.
Take care.